Hello everyone, and welcome back to my No Buy Year. In today's chat from my cozy corner of conscious consumerism, I'm going to be talking about consumerism trends and whether the no buy is a trend or representative of a tipping point. So those of you who see videos from my channel, this channel, probably also watch videos from other channels that talk about conscious consumerism, being critical of consumer culture, and generally try to be responsible about the things we purchase, bring into our lives, and the practices we support. So chances are the audience I have here already has some thoughts and observations on this topic. And I'm very curious to hear all of your thoughts in the comments. I'll start off with that this time because this discussion is going to be very open-ended today, I feel. When I first journaled about this idea of whether the no buy was a trend, it was before underconsumption had actually started making the rounds on TikTok and YouTube. And by the time I actually edit this and get it out, it might be that underconsumption has gone away by now already. So my thoughts and my planning and what I put out here is very much not influenced by the trends because I have to work on my own timing. But anyway, since the rise of the underconsumption trend, it's only solidified my ways of thinking on this topic where consuming as a trend, behaviors of consumerism as a trend, is a little bit of a strange thing. And the nature of the trendiness of these kinds of topics ignores a whole host of possible problems and pitfalls. It's not really the kind of trend that you can buy into by nature, right? Underconsumption, you can't buy anything to be under-consuming. In fact, that would be the opposite of underconsumption. You can't buy anything to do a no-buy. It's not, it's just right there in the title. It's the antithesis. It's the antithesis of the challenge itself. So in that way, the trend is not functioning as most trends do to urge people to make a purchase to fit into the trend. And I know there are things like trending ideas and topics and things like that in other realms as well, not consumer goods. And on TikTok in particular, there's like dance trends and things that also don't require a purchase. And in general, I will say that these kinds of trends of ideas, trends of something you can do and not buy are positive things. They can encourage critical thinking, reflection, and trying to find our place on the spectrum of consumer behavior. But I did want to talk a little bit about the no buy and how it does seem that there has been a rise in creators doing this challenge, the no buy challenge. If not doing a no buy, doing a low buy, and if not doing specific buying related challenges, more, even larger creators have been talking about the problems of influencers on social media and the not conscious consumerism that kind of can result from watching too many of these influencers and falling into the traps of wanting to buy what they're selling or wanting to participate in the trends and wanting to buy what we need to fit into the trend. I saw some really interesting videos from a beauty channel, Khaki Reviews Beauty, that I never used to watch before, but I was served some of her more recent videos because of the subject matter. She had been talking about trends on TikTok, different consumer habits, and I'll share some of what I was seeing recently here on the screen, so you can go check it out for yourself if you want to. But this is the kind of content that leads me to believe that the no buy is not just a trend, and it is more emblematic of a tipping point in society. I know Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called The Tipping Point, and I read it many years ago, but unfortunately my memory is like a sieve, and I don't have anything useful from that book to share. And I've since learned a little bit more about Malcolm Gladwell and how his research is more kind of journalistic in nature, where he serves his own points more than being objective. So perhaps it's good that I don't remember points from that. Anyway, so I think society at large and the chronically online society that's been consuming social media might be reaching a critical mass or critical saturation point with all of the sponsorships, influence content, PR. Or dare I say, I hope that we're reaching that critical mass. Unfortunately, I do still see a lot of comments on this type of content to the effects of, oh, this is what I want to do when I grow up. Oh, this is the dream. Oh, this is aspirational. So perhaps not, but let me be optimistic and say that in general, I do think society is moving in the direction of having a lower tolerance for this kind of behavior online that promotes overconsumption and consuming for consuming's sake, not thoughtfully because we've totally thought through the value that an item will add to our lives. So is the influencer economy due for a collapse? What do you think? Let me know. The other aspect of underconsumption and normal consumption and presentations of consumer behavior on social media is that it's difficult to make normal look aspirational in any field, right? If you're watching somebody do something, it's less impressive if they're doing it at a normal level. And there can be value in watching people do things at a normal level for many reasons, right? For example, if you're learning how to skateboard and you see somebody who's not very good, it can reassure you that you're going to have that stage of not being very good before you become fairly competent. If you're watching a violinist, there's popular videos from musicians who go from day 1 on their instrument to day 100 to year 5. And those things can be fairly aspirational as well, to see the passage of time and passage of growth and learning that happens. And I guess in some ways, some strange ways, my channel is kind of that for conscious consumerism, right? I am going from day 1, January 1st of my no-buy year, trying to become a more conscious consumer and being fairly bad at it. And I failed in April and made some missteps again between April and June. So you see this normal person not being very good at it, and the hope is that I can post myself on day 100. That's probably already passed, long gone, but you know what I'm saying. I can post myself at the end of this year having gone through the reflections and the growth and looking discernibly different from the person that posted at the beginning of the year, perhaps in an embarrassing and horrifying way to myself. But it's kind of that journey that I'm showing here of normal growth, not being an aspirational expert. And I think until recent times, more recent times on social media, what's been more featured is the extremes, and oftentimes the extremes will be aspirational at the top. People who've already reached the point of expertise, or in the case of influencers, people who are showing the excessive consuming, the aspirational acquisition of stuff. And in some ways, the influencer story is almost an opposite of the one I'm presenting here, where I'm going from consuming too much stuff to really trying to think and consciously declutter my way to having and wanting less. And the influencer might have started from humble beginnings where they bought everything with their own money and had the same wants and desires as a normal person, and then started getting PR and sponsorships and accumulating more and more and more and more. So it's kind of direct opposites, right, in the path here. And I would surmise that the journey the opposite way is kind of serving as an antidote for too much observation of the journey of the influencer going in this direction with the consumerism. What with the knowledge that's becoming more and more widespread about the dumps of fast fashion in Chile, the global south being fettered with all of the clothing waste of the more wealthy countries that throw it away, the earth running out of resources, Earth Overshoot Day having already passed this year, the more information that comes out about brand sustainability practices, it all kind of conspires together to create this desire as a collective to make that journey together of perhaps overconsuming, hopefully at a more mild rate than I was, and wanting to decrease that trajectory. And I think this is where the no-buy trend comes in, where we can observe people decreasing this trajectory together. I suppose this is where I have to mention the extreme of somebody who's gone on this journey of the no-buy to perhaps minimalism is the extreme at the other end for many people who present this journey, or for some people who present this journey at least. And once again, this is another case of it's hard to make normal look aspirational, so therefore we go the other way and be a minimalist and make that look aspirational. And even some of the minimal channels or social media presences also promote consumption in a way. This was a discussion that happened on one of my videos about minimalism and conscious consumerism, where I speculated that my own tendencies as a result of being a conscious consumer first might lean more towards minimalism than they have before. Now, I'm also about to film a video about the minimalist rules that absolutely don't work for me, and I don't foresee those rules changing just because of being a conscious consumer. In fact, some of them can't work because of my goals of being a conscious consumer. So if you want to see that, it might be next week or the week after, depending on editing. Go ahead and subscribe if you want to, so you can be notified, or it might just pop up in your homepage if you've been watching these videos. So do whatever you please. I've been trying to curate my own YouTube subscriptions this year as well, trusting the algorithm to serve me the videos that are most relevant to me, and therefore perhaps you don't actually need to subscribe. Some of the criticism that I saw of underconsumption is that it should just be called normal consumption, because this is what the average person tends to do. And once again, I think when we have a trend on social media, it's not quite the same as comparing it to an average person's life. First of all, the average person may or may not be posting on TikTok every day, or even regularly, or any social media for that matter. And second of all, I believe the platform of social media is almost its own society. Perhaps this is a strange thing to say, but hear me out before you write this off as a ridiculous idea. In the society of TikTok, the community platform of TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, we see, like I was saying, the examples that are normal do not get served as much as the extremes. So we see the overconsumption effects. We see the wardrobes that are overflowing to the brim. We see the beautifully organized walk-in closets that are shrines to purses and shoes and clothes. And then we see on the other side the extreme minimalist wardrobes, where there's 5 t-shirts and 2 pairs of pants and a pair of shoes, and that's all they have. We don't often see served to the home pages of our feeds the examples of completely average, normal-sized wardrobes that function well for the wearer's life and don't have a whole lot of excess. That is my personal goal, is to get to that point of having a normal-sized wardrobe. Normal for me, I guess. It's impossible to really say what is normal and what is not, but my definition here is having the appropriate amount of clothing for me to have things to cover my needs and a little bit of excess for fun. I would say what I have right now represents too much excess for fun. And I can't tell you when it's going to be whittled down to the right number, but I have a sense that I will feel that things are more comfortable, there's more breathing room when I do reach that point. I know I did a wardrobe declutter and reorganization where I kind of showed you the after picture of my wardrobe. I confess that right now, the after picture is still kind of a mess, or has reverted to a kind of mess. The shelves where I've been putting my shirts, my kind of folded tops that I don't hang up, t-shirts and tank tops, is overflowing a little bit because, first of all, I don't fold everything neatly every time I put it back. I do fold it, but it doesn't always get laid, perfectly flat on top of each other. I don't always have a ton of time when I'm putting away laundry. There's often little people chasing me around, so judge me if you want to for that, but I'm not the neatest person in regards to taking care of my stuff. But part of that is also that I have a little bit more than my space will comfortably allow. And I have a decent space. So the answer is that I need less stuff. So anyway, all that to say, I'm still working on the quest to have a normal sized wardrobe. And I'm not aiming to get to the other extreme from overconsumer to extreme minimalist, but I'm trying to get somewhere in the middle. Maybe I'll stop right about here, where it's what I would consider normal and reasonable. And maybe at that point I'll make a video about it and put out my normal sized wardrobe and see what kind of reception that gets. But what I was saying, back to the main point, is that in the society of social media, we see these extremes, and therefore underconsumption is presenting an opposite to trend. We've seen some really questionable trends on social media already. Things that you would never see in real life, like the girl math trend. Perhaps people do use these examples hopefully jokingly in real life, but the seriousness or sarcasm with which some of these adages are delivered on social media is a little bit alarming when you think about a real life example of, pull up to a coffee shop and try to buy your Starbucks with points or whatever because you have rewards. Oh, it's free, you know, like, or because you loaded your gift card rather. I think that's the girl math way, is if you paid for a gift card and then you use the gift card later, it's actually free because you didn't spend any money because it was a gift card. That logic is totally bizarre to somebody in real life, right? Like that wouldn't even fly. And again, perhaps I'm just being an old millennial and I'm not hip and cool enough to take it the way that it's meant to be taken. But you know, it's not just the girl math. It's the Sephora kids where they have minors going in and shopping at makeup stores or skincare stores geared towards anti-aging in many cases. There's the prevalence of afterpay services, just haul culture in general, restock culture. So this is what we're seeing in the society of social media, the community of TikTok. And so therefore, to have underconsumption emerge as a trend, it is kind of a response to that environment. So therefore, it's not necessarily that it should just be normal, because the examples that we see on the platforms are not normal. After you've seen 20 restocks, the underconsumption trend seems like a very reasonable response, actually. Even if it also does not represent reality, just like the overconsumption, restocks, hauls, etc. Trends of willing stupidity, dare I say. I might be about to get canceled in this video. But I guess the bottom line is that underconsumption is also not a realistic trend, in my opinion. And again, this video was not supposed to be about underconsumption at its core. So let me bring it back to the no-buy trend. I think maybe no-buy is a little bit different because it's a challenge that's designed to promote personal growth and reflection, and it's a challenge that also has a period of forced sustaining, right? Like my no-buy was supposed to be for a year. And so regardless of the trends that come and go, I will be talking about this, reflecting about this, and putting out content about this here for this whole year at a minimum. And actually, because I failed my no-buy in a legitimate way, like I didn't plan to fail, but I did end up caving to purchases that were not on my approved list for no-buy exceptions, I may extend my no-buy for another 6 months or so and see, or, you know, do something similar but different, do a no-buy month and alternate months, no-buy seasons, I don't know. Chances are I will continue to do some form of no-buy periods because I'm still working through, I don't think I'm going to be finished at the end of this year, but that's a bunch of foreshadowing that we don't need to get to just yet. I do think that the underconsumption, no-buy, conscious consumer trends, presences on social media, exposing influencers, talking about how ridiculous PR is, it's kind of undoing the desensitization at large that has happened through seeing these examples so much prior to the trends of the opposite side rising up. Now, there have been channels, presences on social media before that do and have focused on sustainability, conscious consumerism, minimalism, no-buy years even. And some of these channels have stayed true to their values. It's something that feels a little bit rare, to be honest, because naturally humans grow and evolve and go through their own evolutions and their values change for various reasons, whether it's financially motivated or just life. But there are some channels that have stayed true to their values, and those have been a joy to watch, even if their own ebb and flow of popularity in the cycle of trends at large is probably fluctuating because they don't necessarily play to the algorithms, the favor of popularity. So the channels I have in mind on the top of my head are channels like Shellbizzle, where she's always been an eco-minimalist, coming from a past of hyper-consumerism like myself, and now has a very, very firm stance on her eco-minimalism and not consuming more than we need for the sake of the planet. Shauna Raipari is another one who started with a no-buy year and has now shifted a little bit to being more critical of consumer culture, which has been wonderful to see. I believe is still very, very in line with her mission when she started. There are large minimalist channels, Joshua Becker, the minimalist, who I do believe, I don't always watch them now, so I can't say with full confidence. I do believe they're still in line with how they started as minimalists and don't promote products on their channels. Get to Marie, I think, is another one. I've seen some recommendations for her in my comments where she's also very focused on sustainability, veganism, and I have seen some of her latest videos and it seems like she's still true to what she promotes and doesn't do excessive product sponsorships. Again, Lena Norms is somebody who also doesn't promote a bunch of products on her channel and shares a lot of interesting ideas. So there are channels that have stayed true to their values. There are also many channels that have not, right? So channels that started with a no-buy and now feature a lot of PR, or some that feature sponsorships as well. Channels that are focused on getting out of debt and money management, and then as the creators end up making more money from their content online, they might shift a little bit to featuring more products and sponsorships. And again, these are natural progressions. They're not to be condemned, but it is perhaps something to notice or to observe. And then there's also the channels that have gone the other way, the luxury consumer channels that have gone through the transformations of selling all their designer goods and becoming more down to earth with their consumerism habits, realizing that that kind of buying does not make them happy. I think this year there was a resurgence of that type of content, or perhaps a not resurgence. What's the original word for surgence? All that to say, it's all over the place on the internet. It's the Wild West out here. To go back to the thesis of this video, the no-buy challenge, is it a trend or a tipping point? I don't even know if I have an answer for you, but I hope I've provoked a little bit of thinking in anyone viewing this video. I suppose the bottom line for me is that trends relating to levels of consumerism do seem a little bit silly at the end of the day. And while there may be positive things about these types of trends, especially the conscious consumerism side, right? The underconsumption core trend or whatever, perhaps is more positive than negative. I don't enjoy how these trends open the door for judgment and non-empathetic behavior from people viewing them and commenting and interacting. As always, anything that becomes a trend is a bit of a double-edged sword, no buys included. And finally, consumer trends are always going to be hypocritical, because as soon as you buy something that somebody sees as not a need, but more of a want, immediately you can become hypocritical in the eyes of the beholder. And they're not necessarily wrong, but it's up to every individual to make that choice for themselves. And we all have different areas of priority in our lives. We all have different needs. I, incidentally, will also soon be filming a video on needs versus wants and the extreme way to tell which is which. But once again, I don't know that anybody can answer these questions for anybody else. So I would like to perhaps conclude this video by saying that the no-buy is not a trend. It may or may not be a tipping point, but the reminder, at least for me, is that the no-buy is a kind of framework to create the environment for personal change, growth, and reflection. And that is what I'm here to do. And for those of you who've been here since day one or near day one, you have been able to observe a normal person's growth. We're just trying to be real and prioritize authenticity over attention so that this unexciting journey, in many ways, can be observed in a realistic way. And with that, bye for now, and I'll see you in the next one.